Hey folks, and how are you doing today? Now, welcome to this episode of The Grow Show, where I'm going to be talking to someone who I've known for about 5 years now, which seems crazy. It's gone really quick. But when I think of one word, and that's community, this is the guy I think about. This is the guy who, when I met him beforehand, we spent probably a good 2 hours just chatting about some of the work he was doing at the time. And about how we can kind of collaborate. And we've kept in touch ever since. He is absolutely golden. It's taken us a couple of years to get him on the show, but we have got him here. And for the next half hour or so, we're going to be having a chat to Luke. So, Luke, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good, thank you, Gary. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity as well. Not only to connect with you, but to be on your podcast. Long time coming.
It's been a very long time. Pandemic hasn't stopped us doing it. We're still doing it now. We're
Excellent.
here. So, for the peeps who are listening and watching who don't know you, who is Luke Anthony? And more importantly, because we could talk about that for hours and hours, who is Luke Anthony?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
how do you help people and what do you do?
Okay, I could probably best be pigeonholed as a youth and community work practitioner. And I've been very fortunate to be practicing youth and community work in Warwick District now for about 15 years. Prior to that, I was a youth worker in Staffordshire, and I've held many roles throughout my time here. Yeah, it's been 15 years. My eldest is now 15. Still can't believe that. So I've held many different roles. I'm currently working in a local school, known as Leamington Lamp, and I also develop a lot of community projects as well in my spare time. And you obviously know me from my time at Sydney Centre. I was there for about 3 years doing community development there, which was a lot of fun. And a lot of things that I implemented are still going now, so I'm really pleased about that.
Brilliant. And what a legacy to have, be able to kind of set something up and then see it run and kind of still provide value after you've gone. That's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I asked you a question before the chat, and I think it's really important to kind of ask this now as well.
Sure.
Because what I want people to do is when they watch or listen to any of the content that we share, I want to make sure that they're listening about and watching relevant content. So the question I had to right at the start was, what are you currently working on at the moment, and what issues are you currently kind of seeing? So tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll go into a bit more detail about some of them, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with what I'm seeing. There's a whole myriad of things that I'm seeing at the moment. But as I explained to you before we started recording, if I was to break that down, it all relates to three fundamental things. One is confidence. I think that we lack. I'm speaking as a general rule here. Obviously, there are nuances to that, and there are people here that don't lack any of these. But confidence is a big one. I think a lot of problems stem from confidence. Our confidence in our own ability and in ourselves to deal with that, or deal with a challenge, or deal with an issue, or deal with a relationship breakdown, or deal with a falling out. You know, the list could go on. But also confidence in our community, that we can be supported in those times of vulnerability and needing support. I think that's a big one. The second one is purpose. We all need a reason to wake up in the morning. It doesn't take any form of intelligence to know that we all need a purpose to wake up in the morning. Otherwise, what is the point? And the third thing that I touched on, which is really important actually, is that sense of belonging. As humans, for as long as we have existed, have relied on each other. Otherwise, we wouldn't have evolved and survived the way that we have. And absolutely everything around us, that surrounds us, is reliant on many, many people. So we've got this inbuilt need. We're hardwired for love and connection. That's what we are as human beings, and we need that sense of belonging. And you know, it could be to summarize that in an explicit term, that's a big reason why a lot of our young people are joining gangs, because they've got that sense of belonging. They've got people that want them. Yeah, in a nutshell, those are the three things. There was a second part to that question, though. What was the second part to that question?
So there were the issues that people are kind of facing. So confidence, purpose, or lack of confidence, purpose, and belonging. Which are really important. Before we go on to the next bit, was obviously, as we've alluded to, we've gone through a pandemic and we're still in some remains of the pandemic, either if it's an aftermath or still within. And people are still suffering from COVID at the moment. So it's still around. But how has that played into all this? Has it kind of increased the amount of not increased, but has it decreased people's confidence and purpose? How has it affected it?
For many things for many people, I believe, and the three things that I talked about, confidence, purpose, and belonging, is something that I often reflected on in my practice when I started out youth work 20 plus years ago, till this day. There's still, those are the three main narratives. Obviously, there's loads of issues that are happening that affect many different people in many different ways. And I've lost myself there, Gary. I'm really sorry. I lost my trail of thought completely.
That's fine.
Can you repeat the first part of that last question?
Well, it was a big question. It was. So this was all about the pandemic and how how has it affected each of them. So it's a big topic.
Yeah, it's a big topic. So obviously, my practice started a lot earlier than the pandemic existed. I've been very fortunate. That's another story as well. I've been very fortunate that I've got some beautiful people around me that have helped me to reflect on that. What I think COVID did was amplify that problem. That, as human beings, lacking confidence, purpose, or belonging can lead to a whole host of different social issues and personal issues as well. And yeah, I feel that COVID absolutely amplified that as well. And we'll talk about some of the stuff as well later on in our talk as well, pertaining to men's wellness, which we'll talk about.
On that kind of point, so I know most of the work that you do. Well, am I right in thinking that most of the work you do with males, with men?
That's what I'm leaning towards now. Okay. My practice heavily involved working with young people. It's heavily involved working with families, and it's been heavily involved working in community. And I feel I've got this calling that I'm drawn towards more now, is looking at gender-specific work with men. And there are a whole host of reasons behind that. I could talk about the fact that men make up the biggest percentage of our prison population. Over 90% of our prison population in the UK is occupied by men. Men also make up the biggest percentage of both perpetrators and victims of violent crime. They are also the biggest perpetrators of domestic violence. One could argue that that's probably underreported from a male perspective as a victim, but I could also argue that it's underreported from a female perspective as well. And the average in the UK now of completed male suicide is 13 a day. It was 12 before COVID, and now it's 30. So it still remains the biggest killer of men under the age of 40, which I don't know, but we could be able to write a PhD on that, couldn't we?
That's quite a scary statistic. That it's gone.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's gone up since COVID, especially by that amount. It has, and
let's take into consideration the amount of people that may have attempted suicide as well.
Of course.
You know,
Of course. That's, yeah, sadly, that's the figure for the completed. They
completed
say that
suicide.
completed,
Yeah.
yeah, completed rather than the attempted. Crikey. Crikey.
Hmm.
And obviously, right at the start, we spoke about the big three,
Hmm.
big three issues: the confidence, purpose, and belonging. Uh,
Hmm.
wi- do you, is there one that kind of stands out to you as the as a, I don't want to say the word an easy win or anything like that, but it, is there one in particular which, is you're feeling very underrepresented? Let's put it that way. Which needs more work doing to it.
I think probably all of them have an equal footing from that perspective. Actually, which one needs the most attention? I think all of them do. And what I'm trying to do, what I try and do anyway in all of my work is create an environment where we can explore those things. Whether that be building on someone's strengths or building on things that they may deem as weaknesses, or navigating the the tapestry of life that we all dance around in. Everyone's on their own journey, and I feel these conversations need to happen more around some of the real big issues that we're facing in our community. You see, from my perspective and my position, from what I observe, there seems to be in society this very black and white thinking now. There's no grey area. You're either with something or you're against it. There's no, well, what about this or this? There's no conversation. There's no dialogue around the nuances that could be for people as well. So yeah, I try and create the environment where we can each have an individual journey around that, but do it in a supportive space where people have really thought about these things as well. So the Art of Brotherhood actually started during COVID, actually, and I brought together 5 different men that I knew that were very different in personality to each other, and they all come from different backgrounds. And that's the beauty of being a human as well, isn't it? There's like 8 billion people walking this planet, and we all have our own needs, wants, desires, dreams. But you could have put more different people together. It was kind of like something of a supportive nature, because I wanted to connect people with people for myself. Absolutely, there's a selfish element to that as well. But bringing people together to support each other through this time, but also as an experiment to see how would these people work together, because they're in my different circles. One's now currently the mayor of Leamington, Nick Wilkins. He's one of the original members of the Art of Brotherhood. Another guy, Billa Singh, he's heavily involved in helping out in our community when people needed stuff during COVID and they couldn't get out, so he would go and do that. He does a lot for charities and stuff like that as well. He's a real top guy. Pete Bailey, who I've known previously through other men's work that I've done in the past, since about 2018. I met Pete. Marcus Campus, who's currently the director at the Gap Community Centre in Warwick. He's native to Brazil, and he's came here, exceptional human being, and a very good friend of mine. And there was another guy as well, Steve McGarvey, who's heavily involved in the early intervention service at Warwickshire County Council. And I brought all those men together with myself, and I says, okay, what can we do as a group of men? What can we do? We've all got an invested interest in our community in some way, shape, or form. But what does it mean for us to be a man? How do we deal with the challenges that we're facing? How can we support each other in those challenges? And how can we support our community once we feel confident in ourselves enough that this model works? And it's proven to have worked. And I'm really excited that we're able to open it outside of our our group at the moment. So
Brilliant.
yeah, looking forward to it.
That's brilliant. While you were kind of talking, I put myself into kind of other people's position. And actually, before this, I thought to myself, well, if I'm listening to this or watching this, and I'm thinking to myself, do you know what? I don't feel happy with myself, or I'm not happy. I need to be part of something. So
Yeah,
looking at the kind of three bits, my confidence is low. I haven't got anywhere that belong, or what hell am I doing with my life? If
yeah,
I'm thinking
yeah.
any of those, what advice can you kind of give someone like that? And I know it's again a big question, but if you
Yeah,
just
it's a
take
big
maybe
question.
the kind of the belonging to start off with, because as you've
Yeah,
said, that's directly related to one of the reasons why people join gangs and that kind of stuff.
hmm.
But how can people get involved with the community? How can people get a better sense of belonging?
It's a really good question. Very good question, actually. In a nutshell, it would be to find what it is that ignites you. What's the spark that lights your fire? Is it music? Is it art? Is it sports? Is it gardening? Doesn't matter what it is. That I can almost guarantee that there is a group out there for every niche, every hobby, every interest. That could be a great place to start, is building on the things that you love, um, um, and, and connecting with people that that share that passion. They may not share that passion in the same way. It may be amplified somewhat, it may be deflated somewhat, but connecting in the circles of your level of interest is a really good way of creating a sense of belonging. Because that can lead to other things as well. I think that would be the best place to start. And the thing is, with the art of brotherhood, what we recognise is a very, very. I don't want to give away the tree because there's lots of fruit that you can pick. But the way that it's set out, the model that it is, I believe, and we believe, as a group of men, that it offers something different that other organisations aren't, and it goes beyond just having a level of interest. This is about exploring what masculinity is. It's also exploring the archetypes, the psyche, how we show up in the world, how we relate to each other, and how we can transform conflict as well. As conflict is something that's often frowned upon. It's like, and everyone just gets on edge whenever conflict's mentioned. And we call it conflict resolution in most businesses and organizations. But really, is there a resolution to conflict? I prefer to call it transformation, because what we're doing is that's where the magic can happen. If you've got people are having a discussion, if conflict's happening, and I love that, because we can see perspective there, because we're having a conversation, and we're dealing with conflict in a transformative way. Not all conflict has to be violent. Not all conflict has to be you and us. It doesn't have to be a division there. There's a place where we can come and transform and transmute whatever energy is happening there as well. And it's different strokes for different folks. We know that this model may not work for some men. Some men may be okay with just going to play football once a week, or going for a walk, or attending a gardening club, or even going to the pub. That's a whole other conversation, though. But having somewhere they can go and be their authentic self, have those conflict conversations, have a different perspective about the fear of being jumped upon. That is where the magic happens, where we can meet in a place where perspective is not only viewed as a good thing, but is also encouraged, because perspective is important.
I love that. I love the forward to transformation rather than conflict.
Yeah.
I love that idea. And I love how you've been talking about kind of the openness of the art of brotherhood. You
Mm.
know, it seems like it's a really open place the way you can kind of explore both self and how you're feeling and all that kind of stuff. What do you say
Mhm.
to the people who don't believe that they don't believe that they need it? Potentially, they think men shouldn't talk about stuff. You know, there's no point in doing it. That's for all hell. That's for other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something that I come across a lot, Gary, as you probably gather. Um, well, let's put this out there. One thing that I'm feeling really, really quite emotional about at the moment is the fact that people are having these conversations now. You know, we're talking about mental health in a way that we never have done before. Um, in my realm, in youth and community work, this is something that's been talked about for a long time. There's a green paper that came out around youth work, and one of the intended outcomes for that green paper was to build on people's not only physical well-being but their mental well-being, their spiritual well-being, whatever that looks like. I mean, that's a whole other conversation as well. But it was really encouraged early in my practice and as a young person myself as well, because you know my life was saved by youth work on 2 occasions actually. Again, that's another story. So we're having the conversations; they're happening, and I love that. But what I've also observed is that a lot of organisations have very differing views on what mental health is, for example. And also there is a massive stigma around mental health still. I see it all the time. Although the conversations are happening and more people are talking about it, there is still a massive stigmatization around it. And I think, you know, that's because we haven't come to a general consensus of what mental health is.
Yeah.
And when we talk about mental health as well, a lot of the conversation that happens around that completely negates physical, spiritual, emotional well-being as well, which, you know, they have to work in tandem with each other. All of those aspects have to work in tandem with each other.
And what happens if they don't?
There's no balance. And when there's no balance, as you know, that can cause disease, and that can cause a lack of confidence, a lack of purpose, a lack of belonging. You know, we need balance in everything, and self-care is a big part of that as well. And I'm saying this like it's easy. It's not easy. It's a journey. It's a constant practice as well, is finding that balance and maintaining a good level of self-care that works for us as individuals, because what may work for me may not work for you, may not work for Derek down the road, you know, or Janet in the office. You know, everyone has their own way of finding balance and peace within themselves. So yeah, there needs to be more of an exploration around having these conversations in a more open format, and that's why I love it so much. I love the fact that these conversations are happening, because it's breaking down some barriers. It's breaking down it being a taboo subject. But still, I feel it's still very much in its infancy, and a lot of organisations are like, oh, I don't know what to say or what to do in this situation. It's a very fascinating question, actually.
It's one of those questions where I don't think a single podcast will do it justice anyway, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I've just mentioned at least 5 things we could break down in the individual podcast.
Exactly. So yeah, I can kind of see it working, but I think I agree. There's been a lot more conversations around it that I've heard, and I'm not in your circle in terms of seeing it every day with every conversation. But the way that I kind of feel about kind of talking about how I'm feeling, or meditating each day, or doing a bit of exercise for me, which kind of helps me calm down, or how read comics to help me calm down, or whatever it is, and switch off. The way that I see that and feel about that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost akin to me going to the gym. You don't go to the gym to kind of recover from something. Some people do, but you go to the gym to get stronger, and you do that every time you go there. But when we talk about our feelings, or when we open up, or when we go to seek therapy, or whatever it will be, we seem to do that when there's an issue, when it's finished, when it's done. We
Yeah.
don't do it at the start. We don't do it to maintain and get
Yeah.
better and get stronger. So we seem to
Yeah.
constantly work on our bodies, but we
Yeah.
don't seem to constantly work on our minds. Now,
Yeah. Absolutely.
am I right? I don't know. That's how it feels to me anyway. I think people
Well, Gary,
see that
why do you go to the gym again? To get stronger? Yeah.
go to the gym to
To
get stronger, to get
to
fitter, to
prevent
yeah,
injury. Yeah. To prevent injury, to prolong your life, to make you feel better about yourself. It's the same with discussing issues that we may face or challenges that we may face. You're only going to get better with it. You're only going to build a strength and a resilience and being comfortable in your vulnerability if you do it. You know, we have to do the work, and that's a really uncomfortable. It can be really, really uncomfortable, especially if things have happened in our life that we don't want to talk about, or we've tried to forget, or there's parts of us that we're ashamed about, or there's a whole host of different things that I could suggest towards that. But the only way we're going to overcome that is by putting ourselves out there, being comfortable in our vulnerability, and creating spaces where we can feel comfortable in our vulnerability. Because what I'm observing is that everyone's so quick to judge everyone and everything. We see that on social media all the time. And it's very black and white. Like I said earlier in our conversation, there's no grey area where the magic can happen, where we can have a dialogue about it. And I think that's the same with our internal struggles. You know, we may replace that feeling of emptiness with addiction. We may replace our feeling of grief with being angry. You know, we're not dealing with issues as a society. And again, I'm generalizing here. I'm sure there are many people walking this planet that feel that they're in control and in balance with all of these things. But what I observe and what I see all the time is a complete lack of balance where these matters are concerned. And I think words are magic, and the intention behind the words are magic as well. So being able to speak your truth in an authentic way and not feel judged or shamed for it, we're going to feel judged or shamed anyway. You know, that's part of human nature, part of our conditioning as growing up as humans as well. But having a safe space where we can feel confident to be in our vulnerability is really important. That's why therapy is so important, you know, because, you know, all therapists are trained to be non-judgmental. Again, that's a whole other conversation. Can we be non-judgmental? But that's the premise of going to a therapist. They're not judging you for what you bring. And that in turn enables a space where you can talk about anything. And they're not attached to you in your life in any way. There's someone that's removed from your life. You're paying them for a service. That's why therapy can be so important. I'm not saying therapy is great and all of that. I think where therapy lacks for me is that the human element to it, because also therapists are discouraged from showing feeling or giving personal accounts about what's been difficult for them, which, you know, rightfully so. In a therapeutic setting, it's not about the therapist, it's about the client. But where we can open a space up where we can connect on a human level, actually, you know what? I dealt with that not long ago, or, you know, I've never dealt with that either. Or you've just sparked something in me that's making me think about this now. You know, that's where the magic can happen, through that dialogue, through that human connection. And it's a very uncomfortable place to be, Gary. So I'm really glad that you asked that question, because it's not easy.
No,
It's a
and
challenge.
the thing is, as you said before, is that transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if
Yeah.
you think of the kind of the uncomfortableness of being open and kind of emitting and kind of opening and sharing, and then the feeling afterwards of actually feeling a release or have a flood of emotions, or you know, having that kind of new perspective on whatever it could be, that's transformation. That's going
Absolutely.
from an angry thunderstorm to a bright summer's day, in one snap. It's that
Absolutely.
thing. That transformation is so powerful. It is. Um,
Absolutely.
and also, to be fair, when you take into the gym analogy, obviously, when you go to the gym, you break your muscles, you tear apart your muscles, you're
You're
breaking yourself,
transforming. Yeah.
you're transforming to make it stronger. You are. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
going back to your original point, it is all about transformation. And
Uh-huh.
I'm so glad we started this episode with those three bits, the
Uh-huh.
the confidence, purpose, and belonging, because everything we've been saying links into those three bits.
Yeah, and that's why I had to break it down into three for you, because when you said what issues do you, I could list all of them. I could, police brutality, homophobia, gender issues that are happening, unhealthy relationships that are just, are normal for people. It's normal to be in an unhealthy relationship, not only with your intimate partner, but with friends and families, even. There's a whole host of lists. Financial problems, food banks, the current state of the humanitarian crisis that's happening in Syria, in Palestine, in Ukraine, in
Whole,
Sudan. There's a whole host of issues.
yeah,
But they all come back to confidence, purpose, and belonging as an individual and as a community. And I feel we need to rebuild our communities. That's essentially what I'm trying to get at. And I think I've always been trying to do that. But as a man, there's a whole host of issues that we've talked about. And there's still a massive stigma there in terms of stepping into the gym of the mind,
love it.
rather than the gym for the body.
Well, I think this needs to be the start of the conversation, and I didn't speak to you about this before, but you're going to come on again at some point, and let's have a further chat about this, because it is such a big topic, and I want to explore some of the individual bits of it another time.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
As we spoke about so many different topics and so many different fractions of those topics, I like, just towards the end of the interview, I like to kind of get your summary of it. So if you're going to kind of condense it down into one thought or one thing that you'd like the listeners and viewers to do, what would that be?
I guess the theme of this, and it could be pinpointed to: don't be afraid to have the conversation. Talk and talk. And I know that's been encouraged in many different avenues, but I feel that we're still only touching the surface of actually what that means. But don't be afraid to ask for support. Don't be afraid to step into your vulnerability. And I feel as well that when we suppress certainly our emotions, and if they're really big things like grief or sadness or upset or betrayal, or there's a whole host of different emotions that can, when we suppress them, they can turn into toxins, and then that can turn into disease. It's a scientific biological process that happens within us. So allowing for our emotions to be explored, and feeling confident and comfortable enough to be able to do that in a safe and supportive space, whatever that space looks like, do it. Have the conversation.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I think we're going to call it a day there for the interview, because, as I said, I want to get you back, and I want people to go away, and I want people to absorb this content.
Mm-hmm.
I would love people to share it with anybody who they think it might help. And let's definitely get another episode in the bag. We'll talk about it off air, but let's get another,
I'd love that.
because I think, as I said, this is such an important topic. And thank you very much for joining us today. So, Luke, if people want to find more information about you and the art of brotherhood, how can they? This is your chance to throw out any websites, links, or social media handles. So, yeah, how can they get involved with it?
Brilliant. Yeah, so I can be found on LinkedIn, Luke Spate, Spate, and on the social media channels, you could find me through The Art of Brotherhood. We have a public group on there, also a page, and yeah, more than happy to answer any questions through that. And this is a passion of mine. This is something, youth and community work is a real passion of mine. So I'm happy to hold a discussion or conversation around anyone that is doing stuff within our community. I'd really appreciate that.
Brilliant. So thank you very much for your time today, Luke. As I said, this is only the start of the conversation. So if you've got any questions for Luke that you want answering, to be fair, or any topics that you want answering, we'll get Luke back on the show and we'll have a further chat about it. There's no doubt in my mind that's gonna happen. So
thank you, Gary.
I'm gonna kick you off, and then I'm just gonna say final goodbyes. But please, folks, get in touch. Get in touch with Luke as soon as you can. Share it with anybody who you think is going through anything. If you think someone's lost their purpose or needs belonging or the confidence is a bit low, please, let's start the conversation and let's get people talking. On that respect, thank you very much for watching and listening. And if you need anything, give me a shout, give Luke a shout, and take care, my friends. And I'll see you next time for the next edition of The Grow Show. Take care.